Yo, what's up? This is Malcolm Gladwell's Blink. It came out in 2005, and it's one of my favorite of the Malcolm Gladwell books. I want to share with you a few of the takeaways and why I really like it so much to encourage you to read it or to listen to the On Books podcast where I cover it in more detail. So Blink, check this out. Blink is a book that has you interrogate or really think about instincts. It's a book that has us celebrate quick decisions as well as be more aware of when our instincts may betray us. If you read the book, Gladwell's going to argue that you should take away three things. Number one being that decisions made quickly can be every bit as good as those made cautiously and deliberately. Number two, how to know when to trust your instincts and how to be wary of them. And number three, that snap judgments can be learned, practiced, and controlled through a process that he calls thin slicing. Thin slicing is the unconscious mind's ability to find patterns in situations based on very short and thin slices of information. And chapter after chapter is examples of when you can trust your instincts and when you should not trust it, over and over and over again. All right, so I'm going to read to you now from an excerpt called The Pepsi Challenge. And one of the takeaways that I get from this is just how complicated it is to ask people what they think and to get an answer that most people don't even know what they think. And that's what is going on here in the Coke versus Pepsi challenge. So check this out. In the late 70s, Coke had a problem. It was called Pepsi. Long story short, Pepsi sales were going up and Coke sales were going down. And it was as a result of this Pepsi Challenge ad campaign. Here, take a look.
You're about to take the Pepsi Challenge. You know, I have 2 bottles of cola back here, and you don't know which is which.
In blind taste tests, it appeared that America was choosing Pepsi. But did that mean that Pepsi actually tasted better than Coke? That's what Gladwell's wondering. Americans started to believe that Pepsi was actually the best cola, and so did Coke. And that's when Coke began to think, well, maybe we should change our recipe too. Gladwell writes, this was the genesis of what became known as New Coke. Coke scientists went back and tinkered with the fabled secret formula to make it a little lighter and a little sweeter. You know, more like Pepsi. Immediately, Coke's market researchers noticed an improvement. In blind taste tests of some of the early prototypes, Coke pulled even with Pepsi. So they tinkered some more, and in September of 1984, wow, they went back out and tested what would end up being the final version of New Coke. They rounded up not just thousands, but hundreds of thousands of consumers all across North America, and in head-to-head blind taste tests, New Coke beat out Pepsi by 6 to 8 percentage points, which is like pretty good. Coca-Cola executives were elated. The new drink was given the green light. And in the press conferences announcing the launch of New Coke, the company's CEO called the new product the surest move we have ever made. Oh yeah, that was a wink. Yeah, there you go. And there seemed little reason to doubt what he said. Consumers, in their simplest and most direct, manageable, blah, 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 had their reaction, blah, 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 blah. But how could it fail? That's what we get to. How could it fail? But it did. It was a disaster. What the hell? We asked them what they wanted. They said New Coke was better than Pepsi. What went wrong? So long story short, this chapter here really starts to look at the ways that our split decisions and the ways that we make decisions there may be different versus longer and slower thinking. And in this case, a sip of Pepsi tastes good, but a whole bottle of it, according to this book here, doesn't, right? So that's why home taste tests would have been the better option here. You know what I'm saying here? Basically, if you only take a sip of it, you're like, yeah, no, Pepsi, this is sweet, this is good. But you don't necessarily want a whole bottle of sweetness. And so when New Coke made its recipe sweeter, people in taste tests were also like, yeah, this is really good. But when they got it home, it wasn't what they expected after a few sips, after a bottle. And so this really starts to break down the psychology of how we perceive and talk about products. And yeah. So that's just a little taste of what's going on here. And Gladwell also applies that to the ways that we listen to music on the radio, to things that we choose like margarine versus butter, and just kind of based on the tinfoil they use, how that skews our perceptions into liking one more than another. Marriage, the ways that we pick up cues about the people we like. Poker, gambling, the ways that we gamble, and our instincts of how we know in our body that things are true before our mind does. That's what this book's all about. Example over example and example about how our instincts and our mind, how we can use it to our advantage and learn how to thin slice, and how thin slicing in this Pepsi versus Coke example can actually work against us in asking, hey, well, what do you like, Pepsi versus Coke? All right, so I hope you enjoy reading Blink. It's an amazing book. I also have a full, almost hour episode of it on the On Books podcast. You can download that on iTunes. That's on-books.com, or on iTunes, just, I don't know, On Books, and you'll get it. And check that out. I hope you enjoy it. Later.